Click subscribe to get daily Manchester United content from passionate Reds, only on All for United.
Hello, good morning. Welcome back to All for United. This is a lovely Monday morning here today with a deadly transfer special exclusive interview we have here today. So I'm your host, Keane, and I'm joined by Dharmesh Sheth and from Sky Sports. You will normally know him from the transfer show Monday to Friday on there. So thanks very much to Dharmesh for coming on here today. So we're here to talk all things Manchester United, most notably. And we're talking about the transfer window. We're going to talk about their season going on so far, and how can this January transfer window shape Manchester United's season first and foremost. And we're going to see what the futures are respectively of Jesse Lingard, Anthony Martial, and so on. First of all, Dharmesh, thanks very much for coming on the show here today. Do you value your time? I know you're very busy with Sky Sports. First of all, how are you? Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Are we still saying that? What are we? When do we stop saying that? I wonder.
I stopped saying that usually around the end of January.
All right. Okay, cool. My pleasure. I've seen some of the content that you guys do, so really happy to come onto the show.
Thanks very much, Dharmesh. And look, as I said, I know you're a busy man, so we massively appreciate you coming on the show here today. First of all, most of us know you from your time working on Sky Sports, and you do cover the other transfers on there on the transfer show and the transfer daily, and especially you work rigorously through the transfer deadline, especially when it comes closer to it. First of all, what brought you into reporting on transfers, and kind of where did your interest come to get into journalism?
Oh gosh, so I've always wanted to be a sports reporter for as long as I can remember, and when I was studying, there weren't that many courses around when I was studying because I'm a little bit older than the current crop. So the courses that I thought I wanted to get into, I thought, is it going to be too tunnel visioned if I do a course that's completely related to journalism? If it doesn't work out, then where would I go? So I decided to do like an economics degree for something to fall back on. I did a master's in media communication, which didn't turn out to be what I thought it was going to be because it was an MSc. It wasn't an MA. There was no practical element to it at all. So I basically just got all of that done. So I'd had that under my belt. And then I gave myself a year to try and get into sports journalism after my master's. And I effectively just wrote to sports people. And I put a letter into a windowed envelope so it would look official. I would ask them for an interview. I would kind of tell them a white lie that a few of the publications were interested in the piece. Don't tell anyone that. And then I included a letter that said I cannot do the interview, date, time, place, so that they would only have to fill a minimal amount of things out, and then put an envelope with my address on it and a stamp. And then after about 2 weeks, I sent loads of these letters. After about a week or two, I started getting these replies, and miraculously that year I must have got about 40 or 50 interviews and about 40 or 50 pieces in print. So I thought, right, it can work, but I wasn't getting a job anywhere because it was all freelance, and all of the money I was making from these pieces was just going on the correspondence and the travel that I had to do for the next job or interview that I'd got. So I was looking around for jobs and thinking, right, it was coming towards the end of that year. And if I wasn't going to get a job in journalism, I thought, right, look, I'll use my economics degree because it's something to fall back on, and I'll decide on a different career. Fortunately, I got an interview at ITV Sport for an editorial assistant role. Didn't even think I wanted to go into TV, to be honest with you. I thought print journalism was where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And then I got the interview and I got the job, and I stayed there for a year. Sky Sports News started in 1998, and I got a job as a sub-editor at Sky Sports News. Did that for 3 years, but stayed behind nearly every night that I was in, just doing a report on something so that the boss would know that reporting is where I wanted to go. And then after 3 years, he finally said, okay, you've pestered me enough. I'm going to give you a chance. So he gave me a reporter's job. With regard to the transfer stuff, it wasn't a case of, oh, I want to get into transfers. It was more my boss telling me, look, every job you go on is the best advice I've been given, to be honest with you. Every job you go on, every shoot that you do, make sure you get a number, be it the person you're interviewing, be it their agent, be it a PR person, anyone, because you never know when you might need these people again. So I took that on board, and I just, asked whoever I was with for a number. And genuinely, people who I didn't think would help me out later or would be of any use to me later, I'm still speaking to like 20 years on, and they've given me like 4 or 5 big transfer stories since, and not just transfers, like other stories as well. So best piece of advice that I was given was, what's your contacts book like? Start filling it up, and that's basically what's helped me get stories, non-transfer and transfer related. I think the transfer stuff has kind of come in the past 4 or 5 years, because Sky Sports News started making a real big thing about transfers and deadline day, and it started becoming a thing. And so I got quite heavily involved with that, and in particular in the last couple of years, where we've started doing these bespoke transfer shows every day.
And you cover like all the transfers. I see you and your colleagues on Sky Sports, you do in-depth analysis on that stuff. In terms that, obviously, we're going to talk about current transfers and this window in general, but in your time working at Sky Sports, obviously there's the Super League, there's the all different transfer deadline days and stuff like that. What is your favorite story that you covered? And like in terms of longevity and the outcome?
Transfers is up there. And some deadline days are just incredible, because, I mean, it's also dependent on sometimes the stories that come out on deadline day and in the build up to it. But then some people I always see, Sky Sports News have done a deadline day and there's been like 3 signings or something, and they weren't big ones. But sometimes the journey of getting to a very few signings is really, really special as well, because during like the last week, especially, there are lots of stories going around, and just because a transfer doesn't happen doesn't mean it isn't a story, because it could be against the backdrop of what a club is trying to do. Like, for example, if it's a Manchester United, if they're trying to sign someone and they don't get that one over the line, then that becomes a story in itself as well, because then the fans say, why didn't we sign this player? Or if they do sign this player, that becomes a story, obviously, as well. So I would say transfers, but some of the best stuff I've done as well has been non-football related as well. So I've covered a couple of Ryder Cups, which were just honestly just absolutely fantastic. I did the one in 2010 at Celtic Manor and the one in 2018 in France, and just 2 of the best experiences I've ever had at work. Really, just hard work, like long hours, but what you got out of it was just sensational. Champions League finals as well I've been to. They've been good. And with us at Sky Sports News, it's not just, the kickoff, because we're a 24-hour sports news station. We'll be at a particular event 2 or 3 days before, building up to it. So those kind of big events are really, really good. A couple of times I've been to St. Lucia with Jermaine Defoe when he was doing his charity work out there. And that was just brilliant. Not just going to St. Lucia, but just seeing him in a different environment, because sometimes you get a different perspective on a person when you're interviewing them in a press conference or a one-to-one interview, compared to if you're spending a few days with them. And then you can notice that they're quite like, let me see if I can trust this guy or not. So that can be a challenge as well. But those 2 trips are fantastic. There are probably a few others as well that I can't even think of the top of my head, but those ones do stand out.
And it's great that you see like the different perspective of a footballer, not just obviously as their quality as a footballer, their quality as a person as well, from a humanistic standpoint as well. So I'd say that was just an absolutely amazing experience.
Yeah, 100%, because what the media see is a news conference with a manager or a player and a one-to-one interview where you might be able to get a little bit more in depth, but even then it's only 10 to 15 minutes. when you're going somewhere and you're saying, right, we're going to do 3 features on you, and we're going to spend 4 days with you, then, you know, the dynamic kind of changes in a positive way, because once they try to see what we're trying to do, look, we want to really highlight the charity work you're doing. We want to really highlight all the stuff you're doing on the island, etc. Then it becomes a really, really different kind of piece. And when you produce the pieces after, you can actually see how much that their guard comes down a little bit more. And it really is interesting to see that, actually, when you do it firsthand.
And like, obviously, you know, football is their passion, but they've also these footballers, they have other passions. So it's great to kind of see that from their standpoint and the work they do outside, because I think one thing we don't see normally, and I think the pandemic, we've seen a lot of it, but before that, it was footballers showing their charitable side and it being highlighted more. Obviously, one of our own, Marcus Rashford, does a lot, you know, for the kids in the UK. And like me being from Ireland, looking from the outside to see what Marcus is doing in the UK is absolutely fantastic. Jordan Henderson does fantastic work as well. Like, just to highlight them two, from what I've seen massively, you know, during the pandemic. So it's great to see kind of footballers really show a different side themselves. And for me, it's always welcome to see that, because I think, especially in the modern game, fans kind of only attach themselves to the footballer being the one that plays on the pitch. But on the outside, it's always great to see that side of him.
100%. You've hit the nail on the head there, exactly. And I think sometimes when footballers do get a bit of a bad press, sportsmen and women sometimes get a bit of a bad press. It's good to see that side of it, to say, look, we're human beings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Dharmesh, just with relation to, obviously, a big passion of mine would be Manchester United, named after Roy Keane. I think that just speaks for itself. Currently, this moment in time, our season's kind of turned on its head in terms of the results as of late. We've now come into kind of a new era in terms of Ralph Rangnick kind of succeeding Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's here on an interim basis till the end of the season, then prospectively moving into a consultancy role following this. In terms of Manchester United season, you know, our results, we're outside the top 4. We're currently in 7th in the league at the moment, and obviously we have an FA Cup fixture today, which is hopefully going to try save our season in some respects. In your opinion, with regards to Man United season, in terms of this January transfer window, could this maybe shape United season, because there's talks about some of our players moving to different clubs at the moment, and obviously we're always in the market looking for players in certain positions. For you, can this January transfer window kind of salvage our season?
If you're looking for a January transfer window to salvage a season, I think you'd be in trouble. I don't think Manchester United are looking at it like that. I think Manchester United are looking more on a long-term basis, and their priority transfer window is the summer. Historically, it's always been the summer, unless a long-term target does become available. There are, of course, those exceptions. You had a couple of Januaries ago when Bruno Fernandes came, but you got to remember, Manchester United were after him the previous summer, and if they could have done that deal the previous summer, they would have done. It just became available again in the January. It wasn't something I don't think they were planning to do in January, because I think the strategy always is for the summer. And I think this is a slightly different situation United find themselves in this time, because with the managerial situation and the way that they've laid out the managerial situation, 6 months of Ralph Rangnick, then he'll go into consultancy role and he will help pick the next permanent manager at Manchester United. And I think with all of that in mind, it just seems to me, despite all of the criticism that the current team and even the manager himself is getting at this moment in time, I just think that United are thinking more strategically and more long-term, because what has happened from an outsider, when you look at it, what's happened since Sir Alex Ferguson left, he and David Gill left at the same time. And I think that in itself was an issue. If David Moyes had David Gill, perhaps for one season, would we have seen different transfers in that first transfer window? But instead, you had a situation where David Moyes was the new Manchester United manager. Ed Woodward was the new executive vice chairman. They both came into that role following a long period where one man in Sir Alex Ferguson and two men later on in his reign with David Gill were running a lot of what was happening at that club, particularly with transfers. So that there was no real cooling off period between one and another. It was just cut. Sir Alex and David Gill have gone. In come Ed Woodward and David Moyes. And I think that was the start of what we're seeing now and what Manchester United may have decided to do now. Because if you look at other clubs, particularly in Europe as well, when they have that system where they have a sporting director, now what they try and do with the sporting director is create a thread that runs throughout a football club. So they know that if a manager doesn't work, they've still got that philosophy that will run through the club, so that when the new manager comes in, they can work with the existing players, because history will always show it's much easier to swap a manager than it is to swap a whole load of players who are on big money and on long-term contracts. But what Manchester United ended up doing, if you look at the managers who've been in situ since Sir Alex Ferguson, you've had David Moyes, you've had Louis van Gaal, you've had Jose Mourinho, you've had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and now Ralf Rangnick. Could you honestly say that any of them share each other's philosophy?
No, I think if you look at that as well, the amount of times we've had these different managers have been all different setups. And if you look at the way that the transfer windows have kind of panned out,
exactly,
it looks like we're still like kind of, I suppose, hemorrhaging players from all like three different philosophies. You look at the current squad, Van Gaal's, Mourinho's.
Yes. If you look at the current squad, Keane, if you look at the current squad, you have got players in there that are from Sir Alex Ferguson's reign in David De Gea and Phil Jones. You've got a player who David Moyes signed in Juan Mata. You've got players in there from Louis van Gaal's era. You've got players from Jose Mourinho's era. And of course, you've got players from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's era. So it just strikes to me that there seems to be an imbalance. And if you're saying, can it salvage the season? I would probably say that's probably going too far. I would say that this window and the next window will be very important for two reasons. Who they can bring in, particularly in the summer. I'm not sure how many players they'll be able to bring in now. They are in the market for players, and make no mistake about it. They do want a midfielder. We do know that. That's been well publicized. But then also the managerial change as well, and who they can streamline the squad by getting out of the club. Because there seems to be a situation where there are a few unhappy players there. There are a few players who are approaching the final 6 months of their contract. So I think come the summer, I think what Manchester United are after is just a little bit of stability. So if you're expecting the January window to salvage the season, I probably wouldn't go as far as that. I would say that they're in the market for players. And who knows if one of those long-term targets does come in and can change a season, because it has happened before with Bruno Fernandes. We all remember the impact that he made. Yeah. United got into the Champions League when it appeared that there was no chance at all. So it is possible. But look, United are still in the Champions League. As we speak, they're still in the FA Cup. So I think there will be a lot of clubs that would swap places, but all is not right, of course, at United just now.
Yeah, it's a very uncertain time at the football club at the minute. I think for me, I looking at the current form and how the results went towards the end of Solskjaer's reign, and then even looking now, obviously Ralph's come in, so we had, a limited amount of time. We've had issues with COVID as well. We had Carrington had to close as well. So he's probably haven't had the most ideal start for an interim manager, never mind a permanent one, in terms of that. You mentioned players who are unsettled. Recently you reported on Anthony Martial's interest in obviously leaving the football club. Ralph has come out and said that, that he wishes to move on. You recently reported that he was linked with a move to Seville on loan. What is the status of that at the moment? Is that progressing in any way, or are we looking at maybe this may take till the end of the window to get done?
The ideal scenario for United is, look, they don't want to release players on loan if they can help it. If they find if they see that Martial is not part of the long-term plans and he wants to leave and he's made that clear to the club, then United, I think, would be open to allowing Martial to leave. But I think in an ideal scenario, they would want to do a permanent deal or at least a loan that comes with the obligation to buy at the end of it. It can't be ruled out that a loan won't happen because, look, since Martial has come out and said, look, and Ralph Rangnick has come out and said, look, Martial has made it clear he wants to go. He's not featuring, and he hasn't really featured at all this season. So, look, he's been there a few years now. So I think United will be open to Martial leaving, but the deal would have to be right for the club because it's not a case of United being under pressure to get rid of Martial simply because of his contract situation, unlike some other players who are entering the final 6 months. So they could, if they were to get a better deal in the summer and they foresee a better deal in the summer, then, you know, I wouldn't be surprised that United would wait. By the same token, I wouldn't be surprised if the right deal came along now that United wouldn't do business.
I look at the Martial deal. I think if you look at the current system that Ralph Rangnick wants to play in terms of this 4-2-2 system, prospectively, if he stays with this formation, for me, I would have thought Anthony would have been one of the players who would maybe suit this because you have the two attacking midfielders and then you have the two forwards. It would give him a chance to play. But obviously, with Ralph saying that Edison Cavani staying, he recently came out yesterday and said that, then maybe his opportunities will be limited because it looks like Anthony Elanga's got called up from the under-23s as well. So it's looking like maybe his time at Manchester United may be coming to an end. But look, he is a quality footballer. And I've no doubt if he does go to another club in the UK or whether it be to abroad, that he will shine because he is a talented footballer. Maybe sometimes, look, he's been unlucky, with injuries, and obviously, look, when other players come to the football club, such as Cristiano Ronaldo, and like you've Mason Greenwood, who's bursting onto the scene, I suppose this kind of last 18 months probably has been ideal for Martial. But look, we'll see what happens in kind of these next.
Just thinking about that Martial thing. Well, from what I said before, I mean, in an ideal scenario, United wouldn't want to release him on loan. But thinking about it, if Ralph Rangnick's not going to pick him, I just wonder whether it would be in United's interest to make sure that he gets some sort of first team football till the end of the season. Because if they're not going to do a loan, and they're not going to play him, then I'm not sure what that would do to his value if they're going to sell him in the summer. It might be in Manchester United's interest to try and broker a deal where it's a loan with an option with somebody, whereby he can perform, he can play regularly, put himself in the shop window again, and make sure his market value stays at a reasonable price, because Manchester United did pay a lot of money for him.
Yeah, £50 million. So it was 36. Then the add-ons, the only clause I think that isn't fulfilled is the Ballon d'Or, which I don't think that's going to happen this year. But in terms of that, we did pay most of that fee. So you're absolutely right. Though I think United, with the business heads that are on the board, they will want to kind of recoup that fee as much as they can. Look, as any club would, right, and rightfully so. One player that's on the tongues of many Man United fans at the moment, Dharmesh, is Jesse Lingard. Last season, he had a fantastic loan deal at West Ham and really rejuvenated his career and was this close to making the Euro squad last summer for England. He's obviously come to the last 6 months of his deal, consistently linked with West Ham, consistently since the takeovers have been linked with Newcastle. I've heard other things that he may be looking to move abroad at the end of his contract. Is he maybe a player who maybe looks like on the way out? Because he'd recently been posting on his social media of pictures of him in the West Ham top in the last kind of 2 weeks. It's happened twice consistently now. Is this a case where Jesse may move on? United may try to recoup some sort of transfer fee for him?
Well, look, we know that talks are on hold between United and Jesse Lingard's representatives. 6 months left. Jesse Lingard holds all the cards. He could sign a pre-contract agreement with a foreign club now. He could wait until the summer and have his pick of foreign clubs or English clubs. Or could West Ham try and do a deal in this transfer window for cash and, maybe get a cut price deal? But thinking about that, you could argue that West Ham United are direct rivals now for Manchester United. So would Manchester United be strengthening a rival if they were to allow Jesse Lingard to rejoin West Ham United? I just wonder whether that would be in the best interest of Manchester United. We know, as much as David Moyes won't say it publicly, he always talks up Jesse Lingard when he's asked about Jesse Lingard, and particularly what he did in his loan spell last season. So I think if the opportunity was to come up, West Ham would be interested. Whether it would come up or not is another question, because Manchester United have got to think about a variety of things here. If they're not going to get any cash in a cash deal for Jesse Lingard in this transfer window, then is it just worth holding on and allowing him to leave for free in the summer? Because that would be the scenario anyway. So if they were to let him go to West Ham, does it strengthen a direct top four rival? You'd probably have to argue, yes, it would. So it'd be an interesting one to see what happens with Lingard. What we do know is he's not getting picked either, rather like Martial. But as we know, his situation is a lot different to Martial, because there's a lot more pressure on Lingard's situation simply because he's entered the final 6 months and there's no sign of a new contract. From Lingard's perspective, you talked about how close he got to getting to the Euro squad for England. Well, I mean, look, we're only 10 months away now from another big tournament, the World Cup. And I think that would be uppermost in Jesse Lingard's thinking as well. Would he try to force a move away? What would he have to try and do? Because if he doesn't play much until the end of the season, he's going to have around a 2 or 3 month window, be at United next season if they somehow manage to sign him on a new contract, or another club, to impress Gareth Southgate to try and get into that World Cup squad. Not too much time, is it?
Not too much time. And I think maybe for his best interest, it will be for him to maybe push for a move now. Look, as much as I don't want to see him leave, because I highly rate him. And if you look at this system, like Bruno's kind of dipping in and out of form at the moment. Donny van de Beek doesn't seem to be getting games either. And, you know, if you look at the balance of the system, Jesse Lingard probably is a player who would suit this system in terms of high press, movement, at the front. I think Jesse Lingard would suit it, but I think, again, there's so much players around there. And when you look at Ronaldo, he's almost undroppable at the moment because he seems to only want scoring goals. So, like, you look at and say at this moment in time, if you're looking at the World Cup, as you said, it's 10 months away. You look at other players in England right now, the Emile Smith-Rowe, Mason Mount, Mason Greenwood, players like that would probably be in amongst that same role that Jesse Lingard be playing, Phil Foden, the other players like that. I think if Lingard does want to get into that squad, or even have a chance to get into the 23, or I don't know if it's going to be an extended squad number, obviously being in the winter, it's probably best for him to move now, because, again, even if we get knocked out of the Champions League against Atletico Madrid, there's going to be limited games to play. So I think for Jesse, I think it's probably best for him to move on now. But again, as you said, it's probably going to be hard for United, because he could sign a pre-contract. Let's say if a big European club comes in, do West Ham say, like, look, we probably have to pay a certain X amount for him. We can get him for free, in the summer. Like, do Newcastle United come into play, because they're obviously fighting relegation at the moment? They had a disappointing result against Cambridge the other day. They've recently brought in Kieran Trippier, and they're linked with multiple other players since the takeover. Could they come into play? Everton are looking for an attacking midfielder. Like, if United are looking at this, honestly, maybe not West Ham, like, if I'd be honest, because if he comes in and plays the way he did last season, they could seriously knock us off the top four. So I think United, if we are looking to maybe sell elsewhere, that we maybe look at Newcastle, because they have a load of money at the moment. I'm probably looking at that myself. I'm like, maybe try to get him there, because that would be a deal that would work for all parties, and we could probably get more off them because, they have more money. But look, that remains to be seen. We speaking about players leaving the club on a permanent basis, but I suppose this moment in time we're talking about incomings right now, because you mentioned Man United are in the market for a midfield player. You recently reported on Sky Sports that Man United were interested in Ruben Neves. He's obviously, you mentioned, a long-term target for Man United, and recently ran the show at Old Trafford last week in the Premier League. With Wolves obviously being nearly a rival to Man United in terms of being a couple of points behind, if Man United do I suppose, make an offer to Wolves. Is this going to be a hard deal for United to do?
Well, look, we know that they're in the market for a midfielder. They're in the market for a midfielder in the summer. But the information I was getting is not just Manchester United, it's any club. If you have 4 or 5 priority positions, it's very difficult to fill all of those with the players that you want in one transfer window. So I think United are doing their due diligence on a number of midfielders. They were looking at Saul Niguez and they were looking at Edouard Camavinga during the summer.
Yeah.
Not so far that they would make offers, but they were on their radar, as it were. This time we're hearing a few other names. You mentioned Ruben Neves, Aurelian Chouamani as well, and Boubacar Kamara, 3 names that have been mentioned to me that United are looking at. Remember, like I said to you before, it's the priority will always be a summer transfer window unless one of their long-term targets became available in this transfer window. With regard to Ruben Neves, would it be a difficult deal to do? Well, as much as Wolves wouldn't want to sell, I think they've publicly come out and said, look, we don't want to sell. We don't need to sell. But we do know that if an offer came in that we couldn't refuse, because every player has a price. Even at Manchester United, every player has a price. And at Wolves, the situation is the same. Look, they don't want to get rid of Adama Traore, but they know that if a big offer does come in and he doesn't sign that new contract, then their hands might be tied a little bit. Ruben Neves, slightly different situation because he's got longer on his contract than Traore. So no immediate pressure for Wolves to sell. But if a club was to come in with a big offer, I think it is something that Wolves would have to consider. Not necessarily sell, but to consider.
Definitely. And I'm a long-term admirer of Ruben Neves as well. I think he's a fantastic midfield player. And it's mad. He's only still 24. He's been around ages. I remember when he was playing with Porto in the Champions League as a young fella, and then playing with Wolves in the Championship. And I thought when I seen the reports come out, and I seen the age, obviously reading the article, I said 24. I was like, Jesus Christ. I thought he was like 27, 28. He's been playing kind of a long time. So for me, look, obviously midfield is a massive position United need to, I think, I suppose add to, because obviously Paul Pogba looks like he's going to be out the door.
Well, but the Pogba situation's interesting though, Keane, because there is a contract offer on the table. That was last summer. There hasn't been a contract offer to Paul Pogba since, despite all these media reports of a £500,000 a week contract. That's not, my information is that that's not the case. But that offer's on the table. It hasn't actually been accepted or rejected. Pogba's focus simply now is just to get fit. He just wants to play for Man United again. And that looks like it will happen once this transfer window is closed. Now, we do know that there will be interest from other clubs, and we know that he can sign a pre-contract agreement with a foreign club. What's looking more and more likely now is he will just take a step back and make that decision probably in the summer. Now, cynics will say he's going to leave, and he's going to leave for 3 seconds time. Now, that might be the case. Look, but all options are open, and it should be said here, staying at Manchester United can't be ruled out just yet, even though he hasn't signed that new contract, because there's other things for Paul Pogba to think about. He's 28 years old now. This next move or next contract that he signs probably will be the last big one of his career, or potentially the biggest one of his career. Because if it's going to be United, it would be a big contract, because we know Manchester United do big contracts. And if it's going to be a club that's abroad, then that will be worth a lot as well, simply because there won't be any transfer fee attached with a move for Paul Pogba. So you're looking at signing on fees, you're looking at wages and that kind of thing. So I think he just wants to look at the whole situation, assess all of his options. Every meeting and discussion and talks that he's had with Ralph Rangnick, he's been impressed. And I'm sure Pogba will want to find out who the next permanent manager is with Manchester United as well. So I think plenty for him to think about. And yes, people will say, well, he's just going to see out his contract. He's going to honor his contract and he's going to leave. That could be the case. But it still yet could be the case that he signs a new contract at United.
I I hope he stays, because he's a quality midfield player. And like, look, on his day, I think when you seen post lockdown last year, him and Bruno Fernandes did link up quite well, and as you said, did get us into the Champions League. And if you look at his form post the Leipzig game last season, he got us a second, him and Bruno and Greenwood, Cavani and stuff like that. So like, if we can keep him and then sign a defensive midfield player, that I think again makes Man United still midfield a lot stronger, because I think we're a stronger team with Paul Pogba in it. That's without question. If you're looking at replacing Pogba, you're probably gonna have to buy 2 midfield players. Like in that regard, to kind of match, that quality. Jude Bellingham, so players like that, you'd have to look at them to maybe bring them in. But again, it is a tough one with Paul, and I think for me, I'd like to see him stay, but I'm just getting a sense of deja vu. I'm just getting that sense of deja vu. And look, I think that's maybe me being Irish. That's maybe me being pessimistic. But I hope he stays, and it'd be fantastic to see him commit to the football club and help us win trophies, because that's effectively where we want to be, is back to our best and winning trophies. But again, as you said, it's going to be a long road, because I think you look at the changes that are going to be upstairs. Obviously, Murtaugh and Fletcher have come in, Rangnick going into consultancy role, and look, we don't know what the new manager is going to be yet. We've been linked with every manager apart from Pep and Klopp, really. We've been linked with everybody. So look, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Manchester United in this transfer window, in the summer transfer window, and just in these next coming months in terms of where our season ends up. Because I think where United's season ends up will also shape up what the summer transfer window is going to be. So a lot of questions to be answered in these next coming months, and it's going to be very exciting. For Manchester United in these next coming months. But Dharmesh, one final question for you just before you go. We mentioned transfers on this show, and you've done deadline day. Deadline day, obviously, look, is synonymous still with the breaking news. It goes down to the wire, even past 12 o'clock. There's many different deals. Coming up to deadline day this season with Cristiano Ronaldo signed for Man United, and obviously it was looking like he was going to go to Manchester City, and I was heartbroken. I was absolutely heartbroken. I'm a regular match goer flying over from Ireland, and if I had to go to Old Trafford to watch him playing number 7 for Man City, it would have been heartbreaking. But when that U-turn happened this season, and he was signing for Man United, all of a sudden, what was it like to be breaking that news, and what was it like?
Honestly, that was incredible, because that was a few days before deadline day, I think, and all the noise was that Manchester City were going to sign Cristiano Ronaldo. So the day of this actual signing, when I came into the office, I remember Ole Gunnar Solskjaer done his usual pre-match news conference. I put my headphones in, started listening to it, and then I thought, hold on a second. I said, I asked a few people, have you heard what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said? Because the way he was talking was, Cristiano knows that we're here, along those lines. And I said, you wouldn't be saying that if there wasn't something in it. And then suddenly the snowball started happening. And it was quite interesting, actually, because in our studio, we've got this big video wall behind the presenters. Yeah. And when a transfer is close, they have a big picture of the player who's the subject of the transfer in the current shirt he's in, but then there's a strip going across it of the new shirt that he could move to. So at 2 o'clock or something, I think, it had a picture of Ronaldo in a Juventus shirt with a streak of Manchester City's jersey on it. Within 45 minutes, that had changed to the Juventus shirt and a streak of United on it. And the people we were speaking to, as that deal looked like it was happening, we were trying to get out the line. Look, United are now in talks. United are now in talks. Can we say this? Can we say this? And once we cleared that, we were able to say something along those lines. And then within 2 hours, I think it was. So I think it was almost like a 3-hour gap between it looking odds on he was going to City to Manchester United actually announcing Cristiano Ronaldo. It was like, I mean, it felt like deadline day. Let me tell you that the buzz around the studio that day was incredible.
I remember I worked from home. I was telling you when we were off air, and I was one of the things I remember, I had Sky Sports News literally on the television beside me whilst I was working, obviously working away, doing my job, where my right eye is looking, and it says, I watch all these press conferences, and I was getting kind of giddy, I'm not going to lie. And then when the news was breaking that Ronaldo was coming back, I was reliving my childhood all over again. So it was epic when that turnaround happened. It was great to kind of get your insight kind of on what was happening in the studio in that regard. Look, he's made a great impact since he's come, and look, hopefully there's loads of stories floating around about him leaving United. Let's just hope that doesn't happen, because I don't think I could go through that again. But Dharmesh, thanks very much for coming on here this morning. It's been a fantastic conversation we've had with regards to your background and in regards to footballers, and also just in regards to Manchester United. I really do appreciate you coming on. That just wraps up our interview here this morning. And for all the viewers, do smash a like on the video, hit that subscribe button. This will be released at 2 p.m. today, so you will this interview will come out then. So do not forget, do get involved in the comments. Let us know what you think about the Manchester United midfield situation with regards to Anthony Martial, regards to Jesse Lingard, and also maybe respectively Ruben Neves or any other midfielder coming as well. Do let us know. And as always, again, thanks very much to Dharmesh for coming on here this morning. And look, until then, guys, thanks very much.